Hey, welcome to the first ever video AxeCAST. Audio if you're listening, video if you're watching. I'm so excited to be sitting with a couple of my friends, Alan and Justin. We're going to be talking about mentorship and menteeship. The question really comes to this: is Batman Batman because of his car, his belt, his tools, his tech? Or is he Batman because of Alfred Thaddeus Crane Pennyworth? I think I got that right. But the truth is Batman because of Alfred. Let's talk about the importance of mentorship and the importance of being a mentee in this process. Grab your axe, let's swing it and sharpen it. Here we go. Hey, we're sitting here in Lower Town, St. Paul, and I wanted just to do a quick shout out to feed1.com. If you guys have never heard of Feed One, if you're watching, you've never heard of Feed One, check them out. They work with Convoy of Hope, which is one of the most prestigious, largest disaster relief efforts on the globe. But Feed One actually feeds kids in the developing world for $10 for the entire month. So you can take a student, or you can take a mom, someone on a fixed income, and for a $10 bill, they could feed a child in the developing world. I love that accessibility that it gives this generation, and especially people that may be strapped financially, but they want to be involved in feeding one. Mother Teresa said it best: if you can't feed 100, just feed one.
That's awesome.
So before we jump into this, Alan, can you just tell us a little bit about who you are, what you're passionate about, and maybe just tell everybody who's watching or listening what you do that I think in one sense will become what you've done. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
Like what you're doing now becomes a thing that you've done. Just bring everybody up to speed on all that is the Pastor Alan.
Yeah, well, man, it's an honor to be in the AxeCAST. Love it. Really enjoy what you guys are doing, and really grateful to be here. And for me, what I've been doing, I've really been pastoring the next generation for the last 20 plus years. And for me, it's been a real honor to be able to be a part of that call and to be able to find myself in this place of where I'm 40, going to be 48, and I still haven't lost that passion, still haven't lost that desire. And so what I've been doing is I've been pastoring at River Valley Church. It's a young church. It has a lot of young people in it. It's got internship programs. It's got just a lot of stuff going on, full of young people. I've been pastoring there right now. Also, I run a ministry arm called the New Young Christian, which is, it's a discipleship platform that really is meant to inspire, and it's meant to encourage young leaders to be able to.
What is the web address for that? New Young Christian.
Yeah, absolutely. It's thenewyoungchristian.com.
Okay. If you're listening or watching, you need to check this out, thenewyoungchristian.com. Pastor Alan, I got to be honest with you, there's been so much content on there that has blessed me, especially your piece on, shameless plug here for thenewyoungchristian.com, but your piece on what do we do when someone we love just told us they have a same-sex attraction. Not what do we do in the confines of, let's say, just everyday life, but what do we do as church leaders, as people that have a certain dogma attached to their life, like all of the complexities and the tension there.
Yeah.
You handled that with, first of all, such eloquence, but I think overall with such love and respect for people. That resonated deeply with me.
That's great.
And actually, when you were pastoring before River Valley, which I love River Valley deeply, did an internship there when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I met you way before when you were a pastor at Park Assembly. You were the youth pastor.
Yeah.
I walked into your office, and I still remember that. You still look great, man, for 48.
It's great.
I think you were like 12 then.
Just a little bit of gray. Yeah, exactly. These are gray highlights. I purposely put them in. I'm dark haired. It's fine.
Nice.
Exactly.
So, newyoungchristian.com, mentoring leaders. You have a huge history of people that have just stand in your wake where your life has impacted them there. That's why I want you to talk to this audience about mentorship. Pastor Justin, same question. Hey, bring everybody up to speed, who you are, what you're passionate about. What are you doing that'll become what you've done?
Yeah, so Justin Smith. I have been married for 18 plus years. Been in ministry for 17 of those years. Just like Alan with the Next Generation. So I haven't been a youth pastor, a children's pastor, a next gen pastor, and absolutely believe in the next generation. I have 6 kids, so I've got my own generation to raise up in my home, and I'm a huge Disney fanatic. I love Disney, so I've got that geekiness in me.
No.
I'll wear a Disney shirt all day, any day, and I'll be that, like, I'm your prince.
To Universal Studios.
Oh, absolutely.
You wave it in their
Wizarding
face.
World of Harry Potter. What's that? No, but I have fun with that. Love that. I too have been with River Valley for a little bit. Been the family ministry pastor there, so. Get the opportunity to work with kids, to work with the leaders who work with kids at River Valley Church, which I'm super passionate about. So one thing I absolutely love is being able to pour into leaders who lead, and it's something I want to devote my life to, and I've been fortunate enough to have the opportunity to do that.
And you've got a ton of resources for leaders who lead, specifically in the realm of just what we could maybe phrase as kidmin, if we want to shorten it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Kidmin. So even through our church, we've got resources. I've written a book called "If Disney Ran Your Children's Ministry."
Oh,
so
not if Universal.
Not if Universal, because
it'd be filled with all kinds of white magic.
Right. Disney has no magic, so it's good. Books, and then at justinsmith.com, I blog a lot about the Kidmin community. Something I believe that kids ministry does not have enough people who lead,
right?
And so they're great with kids, but they're not great leaders. And so it's something I'm super passionate about, talk about, and I just want to raise the level of leadership in the Kidmin community, especially.
I love what you do in that regard, especially in people that are leading kids. I have a strong conviction and sort of feeling that we shouldn't measure our church attendance by butts in seats. We should measure our church attendance by butts sent from those seats.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Second, we should first measure how many kids are we ministering to every week.
Right.
How many kids go to your kid ministry? That's how large your church is.
Yeah.
Because that's really talking about this idea of next gen.
Yep.
This generation. This is a word that people have used, that we've heard, that was used when I was a kid, the next generation. And what we're really saying, in a sense, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're really saying the people that come after us. Mm-hmm. No matter what generation it is, there's always a next generation.
Yeah.
There's always people that are, I guess, following, moving along, the people that were born in like 1985, 1990. I met someone at an event that was born in 2002. I was like, how? What? How is that possible?
Right.
I was storing things for Y2K still. But we talk about the next gen, and so what we're really talking about is mentorship.
Yep.
And when we're talking about mentorship, we're really talking about hero making, and that's what I mean about Alfred and Batman.
Right.
Because when I look at your lives in the wake generationally, from a small age to a large age, I mean, you guys have touched so many lives, and there's a little bit of a crisis happening right now in the world of the millennial generation. There's a study, we'll post it in the Axe Academy, but 63% of millennials basically say that their skills are not being fully developed.
Huh. Wow.
63% of this current generation that's moving into the workforce, that is the workforce, that's going to have the next gen be the Zillennials, are saying they're not being mentored.
Right.
This is a red flag, yellow card,
Absolutely.
personal foul that I'm taking a bit serious.
Yeah.
And so I dug into this a little bit, and I've kind of unearthed 4 different types of mentorship that I want to just share with our viewers, share with our listeners, and just drop here. because when we're talking about the next gen, we're going to do that in a couple different ways. First is going to be like a reverse mentorship. That's the first kind of mentorship. It's like the younger age is mentoring the older person. It's like when you showed your mom and dad how to, program the VCR. Do you know what a VCR is, Alan? Justin, you know. I mean, what?
Vaguely. Right.
But most of our listeners don't know what a VCR is. This device that you would put a tape in, and you'd have to set the tracking, and then the screen would show.
Exactly.
And you'd have to be actually physically there to record the show, and it would go on a tape. A tape is like a cassette that, you know what I mean?
Right.
Or, in modern day, like when a grandkid has to teach their grandparent how to use their iPhone X.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
That's reverse mentoring.
Right.
Micro mentoring. You guys got your phones. Happens all the time. People get on social media. They're getting micro mentored.
Right.
In little tidbits of information. Micro mentoring coming from a lot of different sources all at once. And this is a whole nother conversation, but you can already feel the tension in that statement of being micro mentored.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds a lot like micro managed, which we know where that goes, just even in leadership.
Right.
And then there's like this group mentoring, and that's really what the Axe Academy is. It's taking a group of people who want to make their life count, 7 specific areas, bunch of different delivery methods, giving them an axe that they can actually go.
Yes.
Let's just pause real quick to show you what this looks like. This is an axe that I wanted to show you guys that people can actually earn. It's got like this inscription in Kings where the axe head sinks. And I really inscribed, "You are made to do what you are to do, so keep swinging away." And you can see my name's on the hilt here. You could actually physically throw this at someone. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's a symbol that I want to give this generation, like,
Right.
here's your axe.
Right.
Here's what you are made to do. Go build and to blaze
Come on.
what God's called, equipped, gifted you to do. And so it really happens through group mentoring. Let me get this out of the way. And then there's one other one, and I won't belabor it, but I think it's the best. It's the most ideal. It's definitely the most Jesus. It's one-on-one.
Yeah.
It's looking in my eyeballs. It's walking in the dust of who that is. It's that space.
Yeah.
These are some types. So I wanted just to say, have you found any one of these working better in your current roles?
I first have to say, I think the group mentorship side of what Axe Academy does is actually pretty awesome. I'm an investor in it. I love it. I believe in it wholeheartedly, which I think is incredible. For me, I think there's something in. Let me go back. You were mentioning how there's a lack of this generation that is missing out on this type of mentorship, and even losing a generation. I just traveled recently to the UK, and when I'm there, I saw a church that was built in the 1800s, at one point full of life in the center of town, being a well that moms and dads and their kids are drinking from spiritually. And then the next, I drove by it. This was in its original day, and now when I drove by it here in 2018, it's a freaking car wash. It's empty and it's a car wash. And I thought about how the Psalm 145 speaks about we're going to tell the greatness from one generation to the next. And as this generation, and Psalm 145, and I saw how we missed an opportunity to tell the next generation about the significance of God, their own personal significance of how God made them. And so I think we can recover that through specifically one-on-one is very big for me, and going into that place of getting with them and being able to speak into them, because I want them to be vulnerable. I want them to be authentic, and I want to dig deep and uncover their originality, because I think originality precedes authenticity at the end of the day. So how did God make you? How can we cultivate that and excavate that? And
So
then how can we
you're really
pull that
looking
out?
at it from the perspective of what you saw in the wake of them not being mentored, calling that back, yes, group, but yes, one-on-one.
Post-Christian Europe is a great example of what could happen if we don't take mentorship seriously.
Yeah, I think you're right, 100%. Justin, any thoughts on how one-on-one in that vein has impacted you?
Yeah, I mean, one-on-one. Well, I mean, a couple of things. One, I think group mentorship is really important. I think there's a lot of value in that. I think what you're doing here through Axe Academy is absolutely amazing. And one effective thing about it, besides just the amazing content, is that when you're in a group mentorship program, you realize you're not the only one going through it. And there's something about the community that I think really builds something up that's special. That's different than getting mentorship through an email, getting mentorship through social media.
Yeah.
I think it's super effective. I think it's amazing. I think everyone should do it. The one-on-one, I think, is even more effective. I mean, there's something about being vulnerable. There's something about opening up that only happens in a one-on-one context that just pulls the best out of someone. I mean, it just pulls. I think about the one-on-one mentorships that I've had in my life, and I got a few people, and they're actually across the nation that invest into me personally, and they make me better.
Right.
They tell their story. I can trust them. When you can trust someone, it makes you a better person, and that can only be done in a one-on-one mentorship.
So I asked that question because I really want to. I think it's not one or the other. I think it's both. Yeah. But I do look at like these levels and types of mentorship a lot like how the temple was created. Reverse mentoring happens. I don't think it should ever happen. I think parents and grandparents have lost when they are being reverse mentored. I think reverse mentorship is the essence of the road that leads to the car wash that once was a church. I think when the generation that's coming after you starts asking and filling in the blanks for you, not that you can't learn anything from them, but when we're talking about legacy and torch passing and mentorship in the context of that vocabulary, I think reverse mentorship is a dangerous place. Yeah, I think that micro is sort of let me just phrase it like this, guys. It's like the outer court, where it's like it's the outer court of the temples where micro happens. The group is sort of the inner court where it's a little better. And then that one-on-one is the holy of holies. It's like the best. It's like is as good as it gets.
That's great. Right. I was going to say, something that since I get to work with parents a lot in the role that I am, something I tell parents all the time is that everyone is called, and it's I think it's very relatable to this, is that everyone is called to be a youth pastor. Everyone's called to be a kids pastor. Right. Because what I'm saying to them is that you're called to mentor the next generation. So in the Bible, when David in Psalm says, when I'm old and gray, God, he doesn't want to lose his passion for the next generation. He's saying that, I've always got something to give. I've always got something to, it's my responsibility. It's almost like it should feel like an obligation, I think, for the generation before to give back to the next generation. We are where we are today because of a lack of mentorship or plenty of mentorship, however you want to look at that. So it's a big deal, and everyone's called to it.
Yeah, that's a really clear vocabulary you wrapped around that for people to understand, I guess, the importance of it. I love the car wash analogy. I love the fact that everyone is in ministry. But really wanted to give those 4 sort of types in the concentric circles of like, these are 4 paths you could take. And I do think they do have their pluses and minuses, and I do think there's wins and losses, and everything has got consequences as decisions. And I do think there's the ideal way, and then there's a better way, and then there's an okay way, and there's a path that we don't want to take. But I really look at that one-on-one mentorship, or even I could argue in the group setting. Is it really speaking to the heart of Alfred Thaddeus Pennyworth Crane, or Crane Pennyworth? I can't remember. I know all the Batman fanatics are going to totally post me up right now, and he's going to be like, well, in the DC version, he wasn't Thaddeus, and you know what I mean? I can feel it coming. But the point is Alfred is Batman's butler, and dark knights and orphans and the beat up and the people that hide in the shadows or feel like they're in the shadows, they need someone in their corner.
Wow, yeah.
They need an Alfred in their life.
And I think even in a time when fatherlessness is all-time high, when families are broken for whatever reason. They're broken, you know, and they're missing that figure. It's that means they're orphaned spiritually, physically, emotionally. There's an orphan culture, and there's a gap that's wide open for mentors to come in and to step in and go and say, hey, I'm going to come in here because I see the need. I'm going to be the Alfred to your orphan.
Right. So
situation.
my question is really for, I guess maybe, you know, Justin, you can tee this up first. Because there are people watching this and listening to this that aren't actively maybe in that role as a mentor, that maybe don't think they're qualified or old enough. And then there's people that are listening or watching this that aren't actively being menteed. They're not seeking that counsel. And so I want to kind of talk around this issue in these two different paradigms, but at the same time, I really want to just through narrative and story prove the fact that, you know, this needs to be at the center point of how we do life together.
Yep.
So who has been an Alfred in your life, Justin, and how did that change things for you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, being married, I would say like my wife is definitely like an Alfred, but I know not everyone has a spouse. And so outside of that, I mean, somebody wouldn't know, but there's a youth pastor in my life who's always been there for me. And so it's someone who no one will ever know his name, but it's someone who has continued to encourage me when I'm down.
Walt Disney.
Absolutely.
No,
not
not
Walt Disney.
I'm kidding.
It's Mickey Mouse. I'm kidding. But no, it's someone who's always continued to push me on. In fact, even today, because I've had a few Alfreds, so it's not just one.
Right.
And I've had Alfreds who have got me to a place, and then a season, and then just a new Alfred comes along. And so there's a woman who's been a great mentor in my life. Does not live in the state, but lives somewhere else, running a phenomenal ministry. And she is always pushing me. She's always making me better. She's like, Justin, why aren't you doing this?
Yep.
Justin, you have it in you to do this. Justin, you should be creating this. You should be doing this. There's no reason. And she's just always inspiring me to be better. So even when I feel like I want to go like into coast mode, she pushes, she draws the best out of me.
Right.
And it makes me become a better person. And then for me, like, I want to invest into other people. So I think for people who feel like that they don't have anything to give, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I just think you need some confidence, and I think the reason why you don't believe you don't have anything to give because you don't have a mentor in your life, and so it's this cycle, this catch-22 thing.
Clearly, these people, like your spouse, like these other Alfreds that have come along the way, have really been the game changer for your professional career, for your private life, for your public life. I mean,
100%.
Whatever category we want to put it in, and it's really made you want to do that for others.
Oh, I firmly believe I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for them.
Right.
And I'm not going to be where I'm going to be tomorrow or in a year or 5 years from now if it's not for them or someone else.
Right. That's
100%.
good. Alan, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love that you're asking this question because I was thinking about this, and we read, what is it? 75% of the New Testament is written by Paul, somewhere around there, a greater percentage of the
72.4. I just checked.
I knew you'd have the exact percentage. But it would not have been written if it wasn't for a particular mentor named Barnabas.
That's great.
And if there was no Barnabas, there would be no 72 point whatever of the New Testament, because Barnabas, when no one believed in Paul, when no one believed in what he could be and who he was supposed to be and who he was supposed to be becoming, it's like Barnabas, even when all the disciples were saying like he doesn't have it in him, and finally Barnabas says, I think he does. So he takes him for like 3 years in the desert or whatever it is, and then he brings them to the disciples, and they're like, is this guy? And so you don't hear much about Barnabas after Acts, but you see a lot of Paul and the rest of it. And so I think we all need those Barnabases, those mentors. Mine specifically, I found Christ at 22. I came out of a partying, fraternity, drinking, whatever lifestyle of just living for myself, not for God. And I stumbled into a church. When I walked into that church, I gave my heart to Christ. And the very next week, I met a youth pastor by the name of Brad Davis, and he took me under his wing. And I knew nothing about the church, and I knew nothing about
Alfred.
ministry. He was Seriously,
his
it
name was Alfred Thaddeus Crane.
He gave me
Davis.
a cowl and he gave me a black cape and said, "Go out at night and save people." Yeah.
Well, this one doesn't fit you, but I was like, is that a fat joke, Alfred? Or
Exactly. Yes.
oh, that's amazing. And so I'm obviously, your testimony, it was a crucial point of your
Absolutely.
life. And so
Yeah.
here's my point in this. You look back on your life and you can name the Alfreds by name.
Yeah.
And if you can't name an Alfred by name, beware of that. Because what got you here will not get you there. And what will get you there will be an Alfred.
Yep.
And wherever there is, Alfred will be.
Yeah.
Does that make sense at all in the realm of metaphor and comic books and mentorship and wrapping it all together? Because I really, I'm worried about a generation that says 63% of the time they don't feel like they're being mentored or invested into. And then you ask them, well, who's your Alfred Thaddeus Crane, Pennyworth, Davis, the lady, wife, spouse,
Allison,
Walt Disney? They don't,
Mickey Mouse.
they can't say them by name.
Right.
It's the same reason I love, the vehicle of God connecting us to the poor. Yes, there's poverty, but do you know someone in impoverished poverty by name?
Yeah.
Do you know them by name?
Right.
There's something about that brings identity to it. And so I say that just as a, I guess, litmus test, whoever's out there listening or watching this, if you don't know your Alfreds by name, you need to place yourself on the track of finding mentors that will become your Alfreds.
Right.
Because what got you here will not get you there, and what will be there will be an Alfred.
That's great.
The second thing I'll say is to the Alfreds out there, or possible Alfreds, if you will, the people that have been mentored, it's going to require you at some point in your life to think differently about the people that we refer to as the next generation, or the people that come after us. We have to constantly be thinking differently, because in a culture where it's all about me, the kingdom and mentorship lives in the we.
Yeah.
Everything about your personal path, whatever that path is, will always be the me, and everything in the kingdom will always be the we.
That's it.
We got to think differently. We got to choose a better thing. It's like Mary and Martha. If you remember the story, Martha's working, Mary is just sitting at Jesus' feet, and not to bore everybody with the details, but to sit at someone's feet is a Socratic learning style.
Yeah.
Socrates said, come sit at my feet, pay me the money, I'll tell you what I know. It's basically what a university does. It's a Socratic Greek learning style. Come to class, sit at the professor's feet, pay us a tuition, we'll tell you what we know. So when you sat at someone's feet, it's really the equivalent to like sitting in front of a blackboard or in a university or with an instructor. You're in a learning position. So Mary is studying the Torah, following a rabbi that teaches with smicha, something a woman in the first century Jewish world isn't supposed to do. This is above her pay grade. She's supposed to be about the cooking and the cleaning and what she's supposed to be doing. Jesus flips the whole thing on its head and validates, number one, ministry and women in ministry and who can study the Torah and who can sit at that feet, but also really like makes me come back to the idea that we got to keep thinking differently. And so when you think about that term, thinking differently about mentorship or mentee, what do you think, I guess, Justin, what do you think you would say, or how do you think the person who can't name the Alfred by name, what's one maybe thing or two things just off the cuff that you think they need to think differently in to bring them to that spot?
Yeah, I think that you have to believe that that you can't do life alone. There's some people that you've got to build trust. You've got to you've got to believe that I am only going to become better with other people in my life.
Right.
And it's true, but I think some people,
it's huge.
They believe they have the answers, because you're right. They've got all the information in the world at the tip of their at their fingertips. They've got They've got acquaintances
Right.
that they run into from here and there that speak into them, but not anyone who's really beside them, who they, like you said, who they can name. And so
let me float this by you, because you said something really well. I want to point out, they have the information. Einstein said it best. He says, information is not knowledge.
Absolutely.
And I am convinced that knowledge happens by intimacy.
Yes.
Knowledge happens by mentorship.
That's great. Yeah.
And when we are convinced that we can do it on our own, because we have the information, we never will get the knowledge, because mentorship, or this whole thing we're talking about, it's the vehicle it goes in.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if someone's listening and they're not being mentored, they can't name their Alfred, they're not part of the Axe Academy or whatever group they're part of.
Right.
Let's just be honest. You can't do life alone. What's another one you think?
And hopefully that inspires someone, because to think about, like if you think you're in a position that of greatness, like, man, I'm doing really good.
Yeah.
And to think that, wait, if I have a mentor in my life, that I could be even that much better.
Right.
Hopefully that inspires someone to get a mentor, to kind of get over themselves,
Right.
and to believe that someone can push them along, because it really does work. It really does work.
I'm
any
100%
successful
with you on
person
that.
out there will tell you that someone poured into their life. There's not a single person out there who did it by themselves.
Well, the best question I have for people that aren't actively being mentored is, do you watch the Olympics?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yes. What happens at the end of whatever competition?
Yeah.
There's an award
That's good.
ceremony.
Yep, that's good. Exactly.
Who's standing on those podiums? Did they get there by themselves?
Right.
It's a series of questions that gets us to the answer.
Well, even think about the greats in sports. I think about the basketball team. Like, okay, Michael Jordan, when he was playing,
Right. Or
you
LeBron
think
James.
about LeBron James right now.
Yep.
Okay, they're at the top of their field, but guess what? They still have
Kevin Durant.
They still have a coach. They still have they still have people pouring into their lives, even though they're the best.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if the best need a mentor, if the best need someone to push them along, how much more do we? And so
Right.
there's proof right there. So exactly to your sports analogy.
Okay, so they got to get over themselves, in a sense of, we just got to admit, we are not meant to do this alone. Get in the game. Alan, what would you say to someone who isn't currently, actively investing in a one-on-one or group mentorship model with people in their life? They've got knowledge, they've got experience. What would you say to call somebody off the bench to say, get in the game, find a Barnabas and get to it?
Yeah, I would say, I had a thought in my mind. If I can go back to the informational
You can.
one, it was it's the whole idea that there's a difference between, in a world where information's at your fingertips, there's something different between information and impartation. And you can get information from anywhere, but you get impartation from a person. Paul says, "I long
good.
to be with you, so I can impart something into you."
I'm gonna sit on that for a minute. That's good.
Impart is I'm a
Raise your
part of
glasses,
you.
friends.
Let's do it. There you go. There you go.
Impartation.
Cheers. There we go.
Impartation. That's
hey,
good.
Here. Cheers. Exactly.
Cold brew.
And cold brew. And I think that, it's the difference between being an informational fire hose and an inspirational fire. I think everybody says, drink from the fire hose. And I think we're all about information, but there's
I'm gonna
something
go
different. I'm a, here, cheers.
Hey, everybody, for the next 20 minutes, just listen to Alan. Justin and I are going to
Yeah, right. No.
go play ping pong over there.
No, well, Justin was talking about his family. I didn't mention my family. I've got a wife of 20 some years, and I've got 2 kids. And my son Magnus, I'm teaching him how to build a fire.
That's great.
And I could show him online, or I could say, son, we're going to go get kindling. Son, we're going to go take paper, and we're going to teach this.
Yeah.
And so there's something about just lighting a fire in people, under people, spiritually, and literally with my son, it was practically showing him how to build this fire. That's just so different than just going on YouTube and just figuring it out that way. So I think
the YouTube channel that's like how to build a fire? That guy's totally mad at you right now.
exactly.
He just
Sorry,
he lost
guy.
like half of his subscribers in like a single swipe.
I just
start
use
my own
gasoline.
channel.
What is?
I'll start my own channel on that.
Is that bad?
No, it's not.
Not at all.
So
It's fine.
say it again. Impartation comes from people. Information comes from, let's just say,
Yeah,
things.
all the all the channels.
Yeah,
that you can get on
impartation
social
from
media.
people, I think, is huge.
Yeah.
And then what was the fire thing you said?
I was saying you can be informational. You can be an informational fire hose, or you can be an inspirational fire.
You can be an inspirational fire hose, or you can be an inspirational fire.
Yeah, informational fire hose is my part, because everybody
I love
wants to
it.
drink from the fire hose
Right.
of information, and there's
Right.
so much.
That's so good.
But be inspired,
All right.
And I would say the other thing, if I may, real quick,
You
was
may.
if I may commandeer this podcast here. Just kidding. It's the whole point of
Welcome to the AxeCAST, everybody.
Yes, it's amazing, isn't it? You're welcome, world. No, it's the whole point of this. You said, what would I tell somebody? I would say that, and then the other thing I thought of was of just thinking differently. You made a point earlier about thinking differently about mentorship. I think for me, it's going to be about it's about less about discipleship, as is a very church word. I think it's more about movement. Yeah, I'm more concerned about my son and my daughter. I'm less concerned about their achievements, and I'm more concerned about their advancements. And when advancement requires motion, requires movement, it's direction. So whenever I'm looking at someone, I'm thinking about directionally. It's less about destination and more about direction.
Yeah.
And so when I'm mentoring someone, and as I said, I think that's overwhelming for mentors to think like, well, they got to arrive at this place, and they got to help them arrive. Just point them in a direction and walk with them directionally of where they need to go.
Yeah, I 100% agree with the direction and the movement versus the destination and the assignment.
Yeah.
It's like, as a mentor, I really get overwhelmed with everything the Axe Academy is doing, because there's a part of me that's got to wrestle with that tension of like, I want people to go through this path to an axe and then, go from here to there and then go chop down trees, and, where God just keeps speaking to this. It's about the movement. It's about taking people from A to B and then B to C versus A to F, in a sense.
Yeah.
Let that be a part of that motion. And then
it's like my daughter gets an A in her 9th grade geography test. That's a great achievement.
Right.
But I'm way more concerned about where she's going to advance in life.
Right.
That's an achievement. But that's great. Let's keep advancing you, moving forward, continuing to go. You know what I'm saying?
No, 100% no. So the person who needs to get in and find that Alfred, the person who needs to be Alfred.
Yeah.
Let me just give you a thought I've been thinking about when it comes to this whole concept of mentee, mentorship, the importance of it, importance of an investment, all of this.
Yeah.
Who will be at your funeral? I want you to all think about that for a second. You're watching this, you're listening to this, you're in your car, you're on your Vespa. Who will be at your funeral? Just sit with that for a second. Like, who is going to show up? Because that's a lot of effort. You won't even know they're not there.
Right.
I mean, people will show up for your wedding. They'll show up for your bar mitzvah. They'll show up for your,
Quinceañera.
whatever it may be.
Quinceañera.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
But are they going to show up to your funeral? It's who's going to show up and for what reason? And so I've been thinking a little bit about that in my own life. Who's going to make that drive? Who's going to buy that plane ticket? Who am I impacting in such a way with my life, the breath, the blood, the sweat, the grit, the energy that God has put into me? Who's going to reciprocate that energy and show up at my funeral?
Wow.
And then that has really caused me to ask another question in this next season. Am I building a resume or am I building a eulogy?
That's great.
Because my resume has got Eric Samuel Timm printed on it, and it's got a list of accolades and books, that Louis Giglio hasn't read, and you know what I'm saying? Like, all the things that, like, I've done on stages and events and countries, and that's a resume. Along with that resume, though, comes a eulogy of people that are attached to that resume. Yes, I get it, but my son, my closest friends, the people I've walked with, the people that would call me Alfred, those are the people that end up in your eulogy. Those are the people that end up at your funeral. And so I guess, Alan, along that same line, I'm curious to know, what or how would you maybe describe in further definition the difference between building a resume or building a eulogy? Does that make sense? Like, are you tracking with that?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts there? Just tell me what you think.
Well, and I think, resumes are all about fulfilling your destiny. I think a eulogy is about leaving a legacy. And I think there comes a point.
That's good.
When you're in life and when you're young, and there's nothing wrong with ambition. There's nothing wrong with wanting to, just continue to just I want to make something of myself. That's all good. Mm-hmm. But when fulfilling, it's this whole idea of destiny consumes our life. And the older that you progress, which is why mentors are awesome, because they're automatically thinking about those. They're thinking about legacy. The older they get, the more that they get. And so for me, I'm just thinking about legacy for me and what am I leaving behind? What's the legacy that I'm leaving? And that consumes my thoughts. And so much of that I think about is just, success for me will always be about the successors coming behind me.
That's good.
Because the tangible, at the end of the day,
do you think we ask this question too late in life?
Yes. I'm not thinking about it when I'm 21, 25, 28.
Yeah, and I think my point is I think we should be thinking about it when we're 21, 28, 18, 15.
Yes,
I mean, because you think about who Jesus handed the keys of the kingdom over to. Peter was 20, John was maybe 12.
Right. Yeah.
We're talking about a group of sophomores and high school seniors that are now going to be the Alfreds for a whole world of
You're right.
the wake.
I mean, when you say that, I was just thinking, I was just talking to an executive not too long ago, and he's older, and the phrase he said was, "Hey, I'm in this season of my life. I'm now thinking of my legacy."
Yeah.
How great would it have been if you were thinking about that when you were younger instead of now?
Yeah.
And the impact you could have made versus.
I read the stages. I think it was John Eldridge. He talks about, beloved son, warrior, kind of the stages of a man. Yeah. And I think we go through those stages along the way. Like you're a beloved son, then you're a lover, you're a cowboy, you're a warrior, you're a king, you're a sage. You move into these. I think those latter stages, those hallmark moments like 40, they cause you to ask this question. But I'm calling out a generation to start asking this question in their 20s.
Yes.
Yep.
Like, you are an influencer.
Yeah.
You may not have the same number of followers as Adele on your Insta-G or your Snappy Chatty, but you have people that will call you Alfred if you decide to put on a suit and be a butler.
Yep.
And so I think we asked that question too late.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Justin, what would you say, I guess, to somebody out there that's in that vein, where they have been, let's say, in a relationship and trust is a big issue? Where they've put themselves out there.
Sure.
They've poured out their heart, and somebody. How would you safeguard them to get back in the game?
Yeah, for when I'd say, I mean, people are people. Like I'm a very forgiving person, and so there are some people in my life who I felt like have crossed the line with that and have hurt me. But I also know that I can't let what that person did affect future relationships.
Exactly.
And then I mean, just be grace-filled. Be willing to put yourself out there. There are people out there who believe in you, who are in your corner, who won't who won't let you down. They do exist, and it just takes effort. And I think that in this generation, it's like we try once and we give up. It's like no. I mean, keep trying over and over and over and over again, and God will put that person in your life that you need. And then what I would say is, I mean, if you want to become a 10, keep seeking, pursuing that mentor. Keep after. There's people in my life who, I mean, I had to make the effort. I had to call the person out of the blue who didn't know me, or email the person, or take advantage of an invitation that person didn't think I was going to say yes to.
Right.
And it takes effort,
intentionality,
and don't give up. Keep after it, because I think if not, you think you're a 10 if you don't have that mentor, but you're probably a 5 to a 7. Okay. And once you get that mentor, it'll take you to that 10. Beautiful.
One final thought on kind of talking around the idea, the concept, the importance of culture engagement through mentorship, through being a mentee, being teachable, also being a teacher, and the paradox that exists in all of that in us. There's a part of us that feels like Alfred, and there's a part of us that feels like Batman.
Yeah.
There's a part of us that feels like we have something to give, and there's part of us that just feels like we need someone to give it to us.
Right.
Like we're just in a spot where we're in that paradox. I think at all stages, that's a healthy dichotomy within us. When you arrive and you know it all and you're this oracle, that's unhealthy as well. But at the same time, there's a paradox here that exists. And so I really wanted to bring people on a journey with the AxeCAST with you two to help them understand the importance of it from both sides.
Yeah.
But I've got a hunch these stats we read about the decline of mentorship, the decline of, let's just say like one-on-one or even group mentoring, or we refer to it as a fatherless, or the homes are under attack. Do you think that is connected to the rise of suicide in our world, in our nation specifically? People watch this from all over the world, but in the U.S., the suicide rate has gone literally through the roof in the last 10 years. It's increasing this way. My life was just recently touched by it firsthand. Do you think there's a connection there between the decline of investment in the next generation, the decline of the generation allowing to be invested, and the rise of suicide and isolation? Am I crazy? What do you guys think?
No, I think you're spot on, and I think so much. When you see, there's nothing like it as a youth pastor when I've walked through and I've had students who are not here anymore because suicide has come in and completely shattered me and the loved ones in the family, and walking through that is just so difficult. And I think so much of you see a lot of the symptomatic things of that a lot of times are rooted back to isolation. It's rooted back to these places where they're not they've chosen to slowly pull themselves away and slowly only listen to the voices they want to listen to.
Right.
And so much of mentorship is hearing things you don't want to hear.
Yeah.
And coming in and sharpening you and making you better and calling out
that's
bad behavior, that's a wrong direction, dude.
That's a good coach or a good teacher.
Yeah,
They'll tell you the answer that you want to have, the answer that you need to have versus the one you want.
Yeah, exactly. 2 + 2 = 5. I just feel like that's right. It's not. 2 + 2 is 4, dude. And it's like, I know, but I don't feel, I know. And all of a sudden, and I think in a very feelings heavy, in a very much, I want to do what I want to do kind of thing. And all of a sudden, if you don't like who you're hearing from or what they're saying, or you don't like those voices, but you feel better over here, you drift into isolation. You drift into an island mode, so to speak. And we were talking about islands and stuff like that recently versus mainland and some of those things too.
Yeah.
Recently on that in regards to this.
That's huge. Justin, any thoughts on that in just your world as a leader and people that you see? And
yeah, I would say, I don't know that I could say better than what Alan did, but the same thing. I feel like people are isolating themselves because they're scared to put themselves out there, and so and I think they're scared to put themselves out there because, again, the generation before them has not made themselves available, has not said, hey, I'm here for you, you can trust me. And so it's this catch-22 thing where that's not happening, and so they're not asking to be poured into, so they're not voluntarily. It's just the cyclical thing, and it's a sad thing. And I think that I think that if they felt comfortable, I was just thinking just recently, had someone in very close to me. I read this this thread that was going on, this text thread, and this poor person was talking about the potential of suicide and everything, and as you're reading the text thread and reading the response who this person's texting, you're realizing that there's just no trust. And so I know I keep going back to the trust thing,
right.
And but it's such a big deal because I got to imagine if that person felt like they could trust someone, a mentor in their life, that they would reach out.
Right.
Because they know that, hey, it may not be the answer I want to hear, but this person loves me, this person believes in me, and will point me in the right direction.
Absolutely. I think maybe think of I think as a generation we're good at being, the next generation's good at being authentic. I don't think they're good at being vulnerable.
Yes.
And I think vulnerability is about authenticity, saying these are the parts of me I'm willing to share because I want you to like me. Vulnerability is these are the broken parts of me that I don't want you to see, and I can't, and I'm nervous sharing them with you. So because you might reject me, and I've already been rejected culturally because of situations in my family or my life or whatever. So vulnerability is a hard place for people to come to, and I think that is, to your point, that's hard for people to trust someone enough to be open enough with them on those broken parts.
Love both those thoughts. I just have been wrestling with this because two sort of thoughts come to mind that I can maybe just add to this conversation around mentorship and suicide and how they're all tied together. And by the way, Suicide Prevention Month is in September. We're going to be doing a bunch of stuff on the AxeCAST.
Awesome.
Where people can send in their suicide notes. We're going to send them back a hope note. There's going to be some things that we're just going to actively really pursue with people.
Yes.
From a group mentorship perspective, to be talking about this. And I'm not really interested in prevention. I'm interested in suicide eradication.
That's great.
If that makes sense.
Yes.
And so there's some thoughts there, but proximity from the perspective of the person who is going to be a mentor. You guys both talked about it from the generation side of the mentee. They don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want to have trust. What about the Alfreds that are out there that are on the fence? I think it's something about the proximity that they're deceived that they don't have anything to offer.
Wow.
Yeah, that's good.
What I mean by that is this is the Tower of Babel. It allows you to be everywhere all of the time and all quote-unquote informational knowing.
Right.
I think a lot of Alfreds out there that aren't actively one-on-one, mentoring a person. Really, who's your Batman?
Yeah.
That's the question. Who's your Alfred?
That's
but
great.
to the leaders that are out there, who's your Batman? Who are you making into the hero rather than wanting to be the hero? And I think the lie that the Alfreds that are out there buy is that they have access to other mentors. They have access to other resources, so they don't need me. And the truth is what makes you special is the proximity between you and them, the intimacy. My dad is an amazing preacher. And he's wrestled with this. And he said it the clearest. He said, Eric, people don't come to my church at the Brilliant Community Church because they don't have access to great preaching. Because they can watch Andy Stanley and Louie and the whole gang of every person who could preach the lights out metaphor. Even the weird ones and the cool ones and the whatever name you want to put on it, they can get on the internet and watch them tomorrow. They could attend Pastor Stephen's church, or, whatever the case is. He said they come to the church because of proximity. Because they look at me in the eyeballs.
Yes.
And I look at them in the eyeballs. And there's something about that that's really both encouraging and both deceptive.
Yeah.
That the Alfreds that can't answer the question, who's your Batman? Somehow they bought the lie that someone else will do it.
Yeah.
And they bought into the idea that their proximity doesn't have value. Your proximity has more value than the information that you'll give that person. Your proximity to them geographically has more weight than the information that you're going to deploy upon them. The second thing that I was thinking about is when you were asked the question, if you were stranded on an island, who would you marry or what would you bring? Nobody asked the question, if you were stranded on the mainland, what would you bring? And the reason is because the island is the place where we're isolated, where we know we're going to be weak, where we know we're going to have a select number of resources. The mainland is where we have everything we would ever want. And so I think suicide is tied to this mentee and mentorship relationship when Alfreds that are out there buy the lie that their proximity doesn't matter. And when the mentees or the people that are struggling with these suicidal thoughts put themselves on a relational island,
Yeah.
Right.
I think that is gas and matches. That's kerosene and flint.
Yep.
That is this explosive place where the Alfreds aren't involved because they see what all the other Alfreds are doing, and their proximity has no value. And then the people that need an Alfred,
Wow.
the Batmans, the orphans,
Yes.
the widows, the Dark
Yes.
Knights, the bruised, the
Yeah.
down and out, the ones that live in the shadows,
Yeah.
they somehow put themselves on a relational island, and they never come back to the mainland. They go into Gotham, and they never go into the Batcave and have the real conversation.
Right.
Huh.
Right.
That's so good.
So that's my thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's something awesomely assertive about an Alfred that doesn't allow Batman to stay in Gotham and never come home. There's
Right.
something about a Batman, about an Alfred that goes to a Batman and says, I'm not going to allow you to just go dark and never come up for air or come for light.
Right.
You know what I mean? You got to go be Bruce Wayne today. So get
Right.
out there and do what you're supposed to do. And, and I think, and that is, I think that's the competitiveness of, and I would say it's for both the mentor and the mentee, it's the tension of busyness versus faithfulness. I think there is a lot of mentors would add to say that there's a busyness to life that allows them that they don't even think about who could be a Batman because they're so busy. They don't
Right.
think about proximity because they're so, the busyness consumes their life, when faithfulness is one of the most incredible attributes. There was only one Alfred. There wasn't Alfred and Andrew and Alex, and it was one Alfred.
Yep.
And that Alfred was with
And
him
Alan.
and Alan, all of them. I mean, it was all of those years. He devoted himself to Bruce, and I think if I want to challenge the mentors out there and this idea of, coming against the island people and coming against them, say, devote yourself.
Right.
Don't let busyness sabotage an
great.
opportunity for faithfulness.
Right.
Because faithfulness, at the end of the day, it'd be Alfred to that Bruce and watch him go the distance. You know what I mean? I've been friends with you for 20 plus years. I have my mentees, collectively, I added them up. I've got 120 some odd years of mentorship.
Wow.
With the people I'm mentoring right now.
Right.
I think of Sam Grasso. I think of Mitch Johnson. I think of all the different people that I'm collectively, and many others.
Right.
I'm just like,
President Obama.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
No big deal.
But it's, I don't know. It's faithfulness is big. So be an Alfred to a
Yeah.
Bruce the whole way.
Hey, Justin, any final thoughts that you want to maybe punch in here on this whole idea?
Yeah, I would just say this. I would say we're talking a lot about Alfred and Batman, but even Batman eventually poured into a Robin,
Yeah.
and so he became a mentor to someone. He resisted it too. I mean, he didn't want this. You're kind of in my way. I'm trying to do my own thing, but yet he still chose to pour into this other person. And so don't ever feel like and we referenced it already. Don't ever feel like you're ever too young to be an Alfred, to be a mentor. I think about one of my favorite verses, and I alluded to it earlier. I was trying to find it. I wasn't bored earlier texting someone when you were talking, I promise.
No, we know.
Or was I? No, I wasn't.
I got your text.
I was. I know, right? I was thinking. It goes back to the verse in Psalm where David says, "Now that I'm old and gray, don't forsake me, until I can tell the next generation of all the wonderful things you've done."
Right.
And so here's an older person who wants to pour into the next generation, and that was my favorite Bible verse when I was in my 20s. And people always ask me, "Why is that your favorite Bible verse? You're not old." Because something about pouring into the next generation, even in my 20s, and now I'm in my mid-30s, is exciting.
Right.
Because it's not about me. It's about Jesus. It's about the next generation. There is no Jesus without the next generation knowing who he is, or without them knowing their full potential. And they don't know their full potential or Jesus without us pouring into them. And so
one of my favorite
there you
quotes
go.
along that line, bro, is from Andy Stanley. Your self is too small of thing to live for.
yeah, it's
And really, I love how that encapsulates just even in the 20s, the gut punch that you had.
yeah.